The Rwandan genocide stands as one of the darkest chapters in human history, a horrific testament to the devastating power of hatred and indifference. For 100 days, from April to July 1994, the small East African nation of Rwanda was engulfed in an unimaginable wave of violence. Hutu extremists targeted Tutsis and moderate Hutus, unleashing a systematic campaign of murder and brutality. The world watched in horror as an estimated 800,000 people were slaughtered, often hacked to death with machetes in their own homes, churches, and streets. The Rwandan genocide was not a spontaneous eruption of tribal violence as some initially portrayed it. It was a meticulously planned and executed genocide, orchestrated by extremist elements within the Hutu government and carried out with terrifying efficiency. The seeds of this hatred had been sown over decades, nurtured by ethnic divisions exploited for political gain and fueled by a toxic mix of prejudice, propaganda, and fear. To understand the Rwandan genocide, we must delve into the historical context that set the stage for such unimaginable horror. We must examine the roots of ethnic division between the Hutu and Tutsi, the legacy of colonial manipulation, and the political turmoil that gripped Rwanda in the years leading up to 1994. Only then can we begin to grasp the magnitude of this tragedy and learn from its bitter lessons. The Rwandan genocide was rooted in the historical tensions between the country's two main ethnic groups, the Hutu and the Tutsi. While often portrayed as distinct tribes, the Hutu and Tutsi were more accurately socio-economic classes within Rwandan society. They shared a common language, culture, and religion, with intermarriage blurring the lines between them over centuries. The distinctions between Hutu and Tutsi were often fluid, with social mobility possible between the groups. Hutus, who made up the majority of the population, were traditionally associated with agriculture. Tutsis, a minority group, were often pastoralists and cattle herders. Over time, a hierarchy emerged, with Tutsis holding greater wealth and power, particularly in the realm of cattle ownership, which held significant economic and social value in Rwandan society. However, it is crucial to note that these distinctions were not immutable or inherently antagonistic. The arrival of European colonists in the late 19th century would tragically distort and exploit these existing social structures, ultimately setting the stage for the Rwandan genocide. The arrival of Belgian colonists in the late 19th century marked a turning point in Rwandan history, introducing a new and sinister dimension to ethnic relations. The Belgians, seeking to solidify their control over Rwanda, exploited existing social hierarchies to their advantage. They embraced a policy of divide and rule, deliberately exacerbating tensions between the Hutu and Tutsi to weaken resistance and consolidate their own power. The Belgians privileged the Tutsi minority, viewing them as racially superior due to their lighter skin and more European features. Tutsis were given preferential treatment in education, employment, and access to positions of power within the colonial administration. This created a system of institutionalized discrimination that fueled resentment among the Hutu majority, who found themselves relegated to second-class status in their own land. To further solidify their control, the Belgians introduced identity cards in 1933, classifying each Rwandan as either Hutu, Tutsi, or TWA, a smaller third ethnic group. This rigid categorization, based on arbitrary criteria such as cattle ownership and physical appearance, solidified ethnic divisions and made it virtually impossible for individuals to transcend the labels imposed upon them. Section 4. Independence and Escalating Tensions. The seeds of ethnic hatred sown during decades of Belgian colonial rule bore bitter fruit in the years following Rwanda's independence in 1962. As the Belgians prepared to withdraw, they abruptly shifted their allegiance, sensing a political opportunity in empowering the Hutu majority. This sudden reversal of power further inflamed tensions between the Hutu and Tutsi, setting the stage for a cycle of violence and reprisal. Following independence, Hutu nationalists, fueled by years of resentment and empowered by the departing Belgians, seized control of the government. This led to waves of violence and persecution against the Tutsi minority, forcing tens of thousands to flee their homes and seek refuge in neighboring countries. Many Tutsis lived in exile for decades, their hopes of returning to their homeland seemingly dashed. The years leading up to the 1994 genocide were marked by growing political instability, economic hardship, and escalating ethnic tensions. A civil war erupted in 1990 when the Rwandan Patriotic Front, a rebel group composed primarily of exiled Tutsis, invaded Rwanda from neighboring Uganda. This invasion further exacerbated ethnic divisions and created a climate of fear and suspicion, setting the stage for the horrors to come. Section 5. The Spark Assassination of President Habyarimana. The Rwandan genocide was ignited by a pivotal event on the evening of April 6, 1994. The plane carrying Rwandan President Juvenal Habyarimana, a Hutu, was shot down as it prepared to land in Kigali, the Rwandan capital. Habyarimana and Burundian President Cyprien Ntaryamira, also a Hutu, were killed instantly, along with everyone else on board. The assassination of President Habyarimana remains shrouded in mystery to this day. While the perpetrators have never been definitively identified, Hutu extremists within the government immediately blamed the Tutsi-led Rwandan Patriotic Front, using the incident as a pretext to launch their meticulously planned genocide. Within hours of the plane crash, roadblocks manned by Hutu militias sprang up across Kigali, and the killing began. The assassination of Habyarimana served as the catalyst for the genocide. But it is crucial to understand that the groundwork for this atrocity had been laid over decades. Extremist elements within the Hutu government had been preparing for this moment, stockpiling weapons, training militias, and spreading anti-Tutsi propaganda through radio broadcasts and hate speech. The assassination, while horrific, was merely the trigger that unleashed the meticulously planned genocide upon Rwanda.